The US absolutely hates China, and now Donald Trump is about to start his second trade war with China, which will have a huge impact on the BRICS countries, including India.
The United States has issued its largest sanctions package against Russia.
The BRICS is often seen as an alternative to the G7, a sort of rival to the Western order, and Donald Trump doesn't like that.
We have never actively targeted the dollar. That's not part of either our economic policy.
आज देश के अलग-अलग सेक्टर और देश के छोटे शहरों में भी टियर 2, टियर 3 सिटीज में भी नए-नए स्टार्टअप्स बन रहे हैं.
Startups funding in the US market dropped by around half to $32.5 billion in the first quarter, while in China it fell 60% to $5.6 billion. Severe worries for Indian startups. The sector recorded a steep decline of 75% from the previous quarter. This could very well hurt the economic growth of India.
Ladies and gentlemen, now welcome to the stage the 45th and 47th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Nice to win the election.
Hello everybody, I'm Rishabh Shah, founder and CEO of Bolstart, a platform that helps people to invest into Indian startups, and we also help with mergers and acquisitions. And to be at the top of our game, we need to focus on geopolitical landscapes of the world. This case study is divided into 4 parts: brief history of US-China trade war, impact on India, BRICS nations, and positive impacts on Indian startups. In 1970s, China experienced a major economic reform when they started opening their country to foreign investments and allowed entrepreneurs to start businesses. This helped China to gain an entry into the World Trade Organization in 2001, and since then, the US and China became one another's most important trading partners. When both countries were becoming good friends, the US did not realize that Chinese were selling more to the US than the US was to China, and soon, within just 16 years, the US trade deficit with China grew to 375 billion by 2017. But wait, what's trade deficit, you ask? Basically, when a country imports more goods than their exports, it is when trade deficit happens. For example, if India exports goods worth 1000 crores from China and exports goods worth only 700 crores, then India will be in trade deficit of 300 crores. In simple language, if you buy more goods than the amount you sell, you will be in trade deficit. Now let's come back to the US-China trade war. The US deficit in 2017 was so massive that it was even bigger than entire economy of Pakistan today. Just imagine the amount of money the US was short of could have powered an entire country's economy for a whole 1 year. Now Donald Trump won election in 2016, and soon in 2018 the tensions between US and China really started to heat up. It was like watching a blockbuster showdown. Here's how it all went down. The US wasn't happy with how China was handling trade, so they took a major step of suing China's practices in the World Trade Organization. Yes, they literally sent a legal notice to an entire country. But that was just the beginning. The US then slapped a massive $200 billion worth tariffs on Chinese goods. That is, imagine putting a huge tax all the way from electronics to toys coming from China. It was a bold move that pushed China to change its ways. However, China also did not just sit back. They struck back with tariffs of $60 billion on US goods. That is, a full-blown trade war started. And just when you thought it couldn't get more intense, President Trump threw another punch. He threatened to impose additional tariffs worth $300 billion more on Chinese products. That's right, a total of $500 billion worth hanging in balance. But wait, there's more. The US took a direct shot at one of China's tech giants, Huawei, by placing it on what's called the entity list. This move was a game changer. Being on the list meant Huawei could not buy parts from US companies without getting a thumbs up from the US government. This was a huge setback for China because Huawei is China's largest brand. This is what Donald Trump did while he was president in his first term. During his time in the office, he imposed new taxes of $550 billion worth of Chinese products that were sold in the US. In response, China retaliated by taxing $185 billion of American products. Now, why does this matter, right? Before Trump, the US was spending a lot more money buying from China than China was spending on buying from the US. About $375 billion more, to be exact. But by the end of Trump's first term, the gap had shrunk down from $375 billion to just $10 billion. That's like going from owning a huge mountain of money to a small hill. which was a pretty big deal for the US economy. After Donald Trump, Joe Biden became the next president and decided not only to keep most of the tariffs but also added some new ones. This has made things even worse between the two countries. So how does that affect the American citizen? A lot of academic reports say that these tariffs set by both Trump and Biden haven't been great for American economy. In fact, they made things more worse and expensive for US. And this has resulted in many more problems in the US, such as fewer jobs, slowdown of production and economy, and many more problems. Essentially, this tariff war has led to a bit of a lose-lose situation for the US economy. And how does that benefit India? Well, China received the most favored nation as a trading status from the US in 2001. And now that Trump is back in the office, China fears that it may lose this status. But why is this status so important and why will it benefit India? To explain what this status means, let me give you an example. Let's say both China and India have this status with the US. Now, if the US decides to reduce tariffs on goods imported from China by 20%, it has to do the same for Indian goods by reducing tariffs by 20% to keep things fair. But here's where things get interesting for India. If Trump goes ahead and takes away China's favored status, it could be a golden opportunity for India to step up and be the more favored trading partner with the US. Donald Trump has already given hints that he will increase taxes on goods that are imported from China, but not on goods imported from India. This could be a very big win for India for several reasons. First off, this means India might start selling more goods to the US because their products won't have these extra tariffs than Chinese goods will have. It is like when two stores start selling the same thing, but one suddenly raises their prices. So you'd probably buy from the cheaper one, right? That's the advantage India might gain. Secondly, because of these trade issues between US and China, a lot of companies that used to make their products in China might start making them in India now. This could create a lot more jobs in India because setting up factories and production lines create a lot of work opportunities. And lastly, with India becoming a bigger player in the international trade, it could lead to stronger business and political connection within the Western countries. This means India could become more influential on the global scale. While India could become more influential on a global scale, recently Donald Trump made a big announcement. He warned a group of 9 countries known as the BRICS. Trump told them that if they try to come up with their own currency to compete against the US dollar or support any other currency taking over as the main global currency, he's going to hit them with really high tariffs, basically making it super expensive for them to sell their goods in the US. Now, Trump is demanding that these countries promise not to create a new BRICS currency to support any other currency that may take over the role of US dollar globally. He's saying that if they don't agree, they should be prepared for severe consequences on the trade with America. But why do BRICS countries even want an alternative currency? The BRICS group, which includes Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, was set up in 2009. They aim to support each other to grow their powers and reduce dependence on the US dollar, the top dog in international trade. The dollar's leading role offers the US some sweet deals like cheaper loans and significant global influence. Recently, there's been a stronger push within these countries to break away from the dollar. For example, at a BRICS summit, Russian President Vladimir Putin criticized the dollar as a tool for American power, suggesting its use like financial weapon. Meanwhile, Brazil's president proposed a new idea, creating a unique new currency for South America to lessen their need for the dollar in international dealings. Essentially, the BRICS nations are looking to change the game. They want to find new ways to manage their money and trade, aiming for more independence from the dollar. This could shift some economic control away from the US dollar and give this emerging economics. Essentially, the BRICS nations are looking to change the game. They want to find new ways to manage their money and trade, aiming for more independence from the dollar. This could shift some economic control away from the US, give these emerging economies more influence in the world's financial decisions. But can a new currency from BRICS actually replace the US dollars? Well, most countries use US dollars to buy big ticket items such as oil and good, and it is also what they stash as big chunk of their savings for international dealings. The dollar is involved in about 58% of all global foreign exchange reserves. Basically, it is the currency that many countries rely on for their big transactions. Now, creating a competitor to the US dollar would not be easy at all. Even with the euro and China's currency around, the dollar has still been dominant in the world for so many years. The reason behind this is that the US economy is considered strong and dependable, making it trusted choice for countries in financial matters. Mark Weinstock, an expert in global trade, thinks it is pretty much unlikely that the countries in BRICS could introduce a new currency that could challenge the US dollar at any time soon. These countries have different economic conditions and political agendas, which makes coming together for a single currency very tricky. Also, when you are making your own money, people have to actually want to have it, right? The desire is tied to how solid and reliable the country supporting the currency is. Right now, the BRICS countries don't exactly have the strongest reputation to gain confidence in the world. Additionally, India's External Affairs Minister, Mr. Jaishankar, has responded to Donald Trump's tweet. Jaishankar was clear in his response, emphasizing that India has no interest in undermining the strength of the US dollar, especially since US is India's largest trading partner. He highlighted that the reason behind this is that the strong personal relationship between India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Donald Trump. Jaishankar also pointed out that while the BRICS nations do discuss various financial strategies, there is currently no intention to introduce a BRICS currency to replace the dollar. Basically, India values its economic relationship with US too much to take any steps that might weaken the dollar. While all this is going down, here's how Trump's government could make an impact on Indian startup ecosystem. The United States is a major player in the world economy, and its decisions impact all the countries in the world, including India. India's startup scene is booming, growing at an impressive rate of 12 to 15% year on year. A big part of this growth comes from money flowing in from American investors. In fact, back in 2020, US investors were involved in about 30% of deals in Indian startups and provided 60% of all the invested money. So it's crucial to keep an eye on the US elections, because the people who end up running and being in charge of these countries can make decisions that affect how much money flows into India from the US, impacting India's fast growing startups. The relationship between the US and India has really helped India's new and growing businesses, especially startups. With Donald Trump winning the presidency, his business-friendly policies might lead to more investments in big industries like manufacturing and infrastructure. This means Indian startups in these areas could see more interest and support from the US, especially if both countries work together on trade policies that benefit each other. Although Trump does not focus so much on environmental technology, Indian startups that are innovating in manufacturing and infrastructure could still find good investment opportunities for their companies. If Trump supports growth in these industries, there could be more chances for the US and India to work together, helping startups that fit into these categories. The US population is 345 million, of which 5.4 million are Indians, and they play a very big role in American culture and its workforce. If the US continues to welcome immigrants, it could make this group even bigger, which is great for Indian startups. But how, you may ask, right? Well, this is how. Since most of the NRIs living in the US hold advanced degrees, their salaries are upwards of $120,000 per year, which is roughly 1 crore rupees per year, which means they make roughly 8 lakh rupees per month. And a lot of these high earning individuals have this myth and assumption that they need crores of rupees to invest into Indian startups, which is not true at all. We have funded 13 startups this year, and the median and average ticket size per investor's investment was just 3 lakh rupees, which is roughly 10 days worth of salary for these NRIs living in the US. This can help us get a lot of funds back into India and acts as a very good investment opportunity for these NRIs. However, Trump has talked a lot about making immigration rules stricter. This could make it harder for Indian professionals to work in the US. But back home in India, there is still a strong group of skilled workers and business minds that could keep things moving forward for Indian startups. As India continues to grow as a major player in the global economic stage, it is becoming an increasingly attractive opportunity for US investors. In 2021 alone, India attracted $42 billion in investments into the Indian startups, which is roughly 3.6 lakh crores. This is a very huge deal. And even though we might see new rules aimed at potentially protecting the local businesses in the US, during the Trump era, India's unique situation in this US-China trade war could actually work in its favor, helping it get better deals than any other countries in the world. India's economy is booming and it is expected to grow 4 times larger in the next 20 years. That makes it a hot destination for US money, no matter what new policies come into play. However, the impact on Indian startups could differ depending on their industry. Companies in the sector such as manufacturing and infrastructure might see a big boost, while environmental companies could run into some challenges. But overall, thanks to India's important role as strategic ally for the US, its startup scene is likely to remain strong. Driven by both local demand and global partnerships, Indian startups are poised to keep thriving. In conclusion, Donald Trump's presidency could lead to potential removal of China's most favored nation status and could shift the trade balance, benefiting countries like India, Indian startups, particularly in these sectors, such as manufacturing and infrastructure, which might see an increased opportunity into investments by foreign investors, and possibly also benefit in a shift in production from China to India. Meanwhile, the broader implications of US-China trade war and policies around trade and tariff barriers could affect global economic stability and growth. This also includes possible shifts in visa policies, which might affect the global workforce. As we navigate through these changing times, the relationship between US and China will be very crucial. Remember, in the world of global economies and politics, change is the only constant. And how these nations adapt to these changes will determine the future landscape of international trade and economic growth. We help people to invest into Indian startups with check size as low as 3 to 4 lakh rupees only, or that is $4,000. Just comment how and my team will contact you with some amazing startups. So stay tuned, stay informed and watch how these fascinating dynamics unfold.